not let people submit applications to get a sales job, period. I'm going to need you to cold call and business develop into the opportunity. I reject every candidate to their face on the first time I talk to them. So Tom, you call me, we have a good conversation. I say, honestly, Tom, seems like a great guy, seems super talented. I don't know that I'm feeling it. Why do I do that? Because I want to see, do you handle objections? Do you handle getting shut down? And can you push back on me? Because that's the job to be done once I hire you. Or do you fold like a lawn chair? You fold like a lawn chair, you're going to fold like a lawn chair when I put you in seat.
Welcome to another episode of SourceCo Sessions, and I'm really excited about this one. This is an area that is just growing and getting increasingly more and more important in the worlds of deal sourcing, both at third-party providers, at private equity firms, at bankers and brokers, and that's really cold calling. And so today we're going to dive deep into that. And we've got Joey Gilkey here with Titan X, and he's going to quickly introduce himself, and then we're going to dive in.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
No, excited to have you.
First time caller. Joey Gilkey, CEO, Titan X. Titan X, we specialize in the phone-led go-to-market space. So all we do all day, every day is look at data in the phone, go-to-market, cold calling space. Been in this space for a long time, so 12 years in the top-of-funnel business development, sales, and revenue technology space. Built Titan X. I actually acquired the IP about 2.5 years ago, launched it to the market about 19 months ago, and in 19 months went from $0 to $100 million valuations. So we're doing something right.
That's awesome. And, I think it's really interesting because I remember when you actually bought it, when you rebranded it from Phone Ready Leads. So it's been a really cool kind of process, is just seeing you grow it. But really want to, start more broadly, and maybe you could just talk about your experience learning cold calling, how you got exposed to it, and how you got to your knowledge base.
Sure. Yeah. So, I'll just take a step back on the background. So I come from the yellow books, direct line on the desk type of business development world. So it's always been hard-nosed, nose to the grindstone type of biz dev. And I actually fell in love with it, 12, 13 years ago when I really got into this. Because as I tried email and as I tried LinkedIn, and I worked different channels, and LinkedIn wasn't really even around then. I actually used to be in the tech recruiting space when I first started. There's something unique about the phone that I think that never left me, and I just continued to double down on it, even when the rest of the world went to email and LinkedIn and automation. And that thing is that what I love about the phone is it is a conversational advertising platform. You think about advertising. It's how do I place a message in front of my buyers? That's all cold calling is. The only unique thing about cold calling that no other channel really has is you get instant bi-directional feedback from the person you place the ad to. And so when you start looking at cold calling away from telesales and call centers, and you start looking at it as it's a strategic place to deliver an ad and get direct feedback and then maneuver the conversation or the deal accordingly. So for me, I've just been in this space a long time. I've watched phone data for a long time. I've seen hundreds of millions of phone records and campaigns and sequences at this point. And so for me, it's something that most people kind of frown upon, which is cold calling. I fell in love with it years ago and have just built my entire career around it.
It's funny to me because I've always thought pretty much any sales process or marketing process in the kind of B2B world, the end goal is to get them on the phone. That's
right. Yeah.
It's no matter how you get there, it is without a doubt the end goal. I just think it's, what it's been amazing at in many ways for a lot of people is it's the shortest and most direct route to that.
If you can reach them, right? Yeah. And that's where Titan X ends up coming into play, is because not everyone's reachable. But once you reach them, there's no better channel to develop intel and intent and create intrigue in an account that you want to break into or a prospect that you want to speak with. Because if you think about any other channel like email or LinkedIn, it's very single direction, just blasting things in front of you. If you like it, we eventually might talk. If you don't tell me why. You just ignore it, or you just tell me to F off or unsubscribe. I don't get anything from that. There's no intel from a conversation that doesn't lead to a direct meeting in that moment. And so that's where the phone, I think, is uniquely positioned. It's a powerful channel. I wish more people were buying into it. I think they are now finally getting smart and realizing that there is a lot more to the phone than just call people, set appointments.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a reaction to the world that we live in, right? Email is not only getting more difficult to execute on, but people don't interact with it the same way that they used to. And so it's really, I think it's a resurgence in many ways, but to a lot of people it never left.
Correct. Yeah, it never left, right? It lost its moment in the sun for a couple of years, but thankfully, I think that the sun ended up exposing email and LinkedIn for the challenges that have been presented to us, and then people are running back to the phone in droves, which I appreciate because I live in this world.
I guess maybe you could just talk about that, right? You've been in this for a long time. So how has cold calling changed from 5 or 10 years ago to today?
Well, I think fundamentally it hasn't changed in terms of the purpose of the phone should have never changed, and the mechanism to which we actually dial has slightly changed, like platform by platform. You can dial at different velocities, different speeds, etc. I think the biggest thing that's changed is the reachability of the market. So if you take a different parallel example of like email, it's like email open rates used to be massive. I'd send 100 emails, I'd get like 40 people, 50 people, 60 people to open it, and I might get 5, 6, 7 responses. Well, as Google and Microsoft and Outlook have created their algorithms to kind of put things in spam or blacklist your domain, the deliverability has gone down substantially. And so your ability to even get an email in their inbox is becoming more and more challenging. The phone, similarly, has had similar headwinds. And so back in the day, you could make 100 dials and talk to 15 people pretty easy, regularly. Nowadays, you can make 100 dials, you talk to 3 or 4. And so a lot of that's because the carriers, T-Mobile, Verizon, et cetera, are doing the same thing that Google and Outlook are doing on email. They're monitoring behavior to make sure it's not spam. If they identify it as spam, they throw it into a spam filter. That's why you see spam likely on your phone all the time. And so that's where it's fundamentally changed. And so there's a lot more technicality to it. How do you deliver calls at scale and not get thrown in spam? There's also different tools and things that can help you increase that connect rate, right? The data quality you have, as well as tools like ours, which is more on the phone intent space. But as a whole, like, the mechanism of calling someone, talking to someone has not changed.
Yeah, I think, and that's true. When I think about marketing and sales in general, right, the mechanism is what changes typically. It's what's delivering the ad. It went from radio and TV to digital to magazines to TikTok, and it went from, direct mail to email. And I think phone calling, the act of getting someone on the phone and being able to understand their pain and potentially offer a solution hasn't changed, but the technical infrastructure behind that has become a lot more complicated and a lot more difficult to manage.
I 100% agree. Everything is becoming more technically draining to just deliver what used to be a very seamless click button, get result.
So when you think about that today, if you're starting almost from day one today, where do you need to be looking across the kind of workflow, the tech stack, whatever you want to call it, for how you should be building your cold calling organization from day one?
Yeah, I actually wouldn't. I wouldn't even look at technology yet. I think what I would look at is understanding the fundamentals. My whole belief is we have this acronym we call FASCOT. Do the fundamentals at scale consistently over time. And so what are those fundamentals is the most important question. And it comes down to 4 pillars. And so when I back up, outbound, and more specifically phone-led outbounds, cold calling, comes down to 4 things that are very simple and conceptually, but very difficult or very challenging to pull off in practice. And so those pillars are list, message, rep, follow-up. List is my targeting the right companies or right accounts that I know I can sell to or want to sell to. Am I targeting the right people, the contacts, the prospects within that account? Right, that seems very basic, and it is very simple at its core. But how you go and ingest that data, how you analyze that data, how you know those are the right accounts and right people. The second is message. Right, so list is number 1, message is number 2. What is it that I say to those right people at those right accounts at the right time? And so there is a lot of different variations of how you can message to a prospect. But if you can have product market fit, you can have the right targeting. But if you have improper message market fit, like what is the message that's going to land with this particular industry or this particular persona, then it's going to fall on deaf ears. The third is rep, right? So list, then message, then rep. Rep is who is delivering the message to the right contact at the right account. Are they trained in the right ways? Are they doing the right inputs to get the right outcomes? Are they accountable? Are we ramping them the right way? Are they qualitatively as good as they are quantitatively? We've just shoved quantitative data at sales reps and say, make more dials, but we don't focus on the qualitative aspects of the rep. And the last part's follow-up. When you get conversations, we are not knockout artists, especially in your world. Like, some people are not ready to sell for 2, 3, 4, 6, 10 years. And so if that's true, then I can't be a knockout artist expecting to get a conversion every time I talk to someone. And so therefore, what does that mean? It means I have to have a very solid follow-up practice. Now, I bring this all back, a long-winded answer of saying the reason I don't say focus on technology yet is because if we can't even get some of those basic things of calling the right people, getting the right data for them, saying the right thing to them, and getting the rep to know how to do that predictably and scalably, and following up when I had those conversations, then the technology really doesn't matter. You're just going to scale dysfunction. And so I would start
the technology,
with that.
As I said, the technology really allows you to execute on those things you just said, as opposed to kind of understand and design them. So I guess let's go there. Let's go point by point there. So data, right? And just so you have some context, right? In our world, which is sourcing small business acquisitions, data is often exceptionally hard to come by. And my experience doing this has always been that most of the software out there, most of the data sources out there are designed around software sales, because that is where a lot of the advancement in technology, where a lot of the infrastructure and investing in large sales team has been in the last 10, 15 years, 20 years. Yeah. So the sales and marketing tool, use case as a whole has often been designed around them. Mm-hmm. So we've always, small business data has always been something that is struggle both on the how do we identify the company that is the right fit, but then how do we identify the person, and then how do we get their phone number?
Yeah.
The upside, I think, in the small business world is, landlines still work a lot more than they do in this world than other industries. But that data is still incredibly difficult to get. So maybe you could just talk about best practices, things that you've seen work when it comes to both the list building and the data, but as well as the contact information and then phone number as well, and
that's right.
Kind of cell phones versus store phones.
Yeah, and I would actually broaden your definition. So you're correct in the sense, directionally correct in the sense that these data providers are built for SaaS technology. I'd probably broaden that and say it's really built around digitally native audiences. Who's online and therefore has a digital footprint. So therefore, I can then scrape and gather, intent or signals or scrape data off the internet. And so that's the first question you have to ask is your target audience, small business or not, are they digitally native businesses, or are they more mom and pop shop, blue collar? Like I know that going after the HVAC space or going after, the trades industry, or maybe even like some manufacturing construction can be more challenging. And so that's going to help you determine whether or not you should be investing a ton into these data resources or not. I'll take a step back to answer your question, which is from a strategic perspective, what I would do, or a process perspective maybe, is I'm a fan of we target accounts, we sell to people. And so before you do anything else where you might go into any other database, whether it's built for digitally native or not, instead of looking for, give me a list of all CEOs in Detroit, Michigan, right? It's where a lot of people will start. Or you're starting with the contact, you're not starting with the account. And so the good thing is account data is actually very accessible. There's NICE codes, there are SIC codes. There's a lot of codes that enable you to start whittling down. And there's a lot of directories and databases that can help you identify accounts that are good fits.
I should note there's a lot of free directories and Reference USA and other ones where, because a lot of the data providers are just reselling I can never say NIA CIS code and SIC code data.
Yeah, I cheat and just call it NICE.
Exactly. And look, sometimes they'll even enrich it with LinkedIn and, gloss it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to access that data and yourself. And, I think, look, if you want to manually review it to filter it down, that's certainly helpful. You can also use technology and tools to help you do that as well.
Yeah, I think there's certainly been a lot of movement in the AI space, using tools like Clay or any of these tools that have, AI scraping and things of that nature, because what it can do is it can say, hey, here's a domain, go scrape that website, take all the text off of it, tell me what they do. How big do you think they are? It can also pull in signals from articles of like fundraising or, PR press releases, etc. It's also helpful too if you have an ability to identify employee count and you're in a space where you know that, okay, on average, these types of companies make $100,000 in revenue per head. Well, they have 20 heads, they're probably doing $2 million in revenue, roughly. That can help you start to whittle it down. But I think starting with the accounts first. And so whether you're doing geographic specific or you're doing industry vertical segment specific, there's an answer to that question somewhere. Right? That data lives somewhere, whether it's local, that's Chamber of Commerce, it's local directories, whether it's industry, there's certifications, there's conferences, there's directories specific to that industry. There's a lot of places to find the account. That's the easier part. The harder part now is identifying who owns that company, in your case, because you guys go after typically the business owner, CEO, president, founder. That's a much more labor of love. Again, back to the question, are they digitally native or are they not? If they're not digitally native, it's a hard task. And so I tend to say you actually should use more technology there or data providers that specialize in skip tracing, reverse engineering, who owns the entity and things of that nature. So there's tools like Data Lane that's really good for retail, trades, things of that nature. I would check out Data Lane. I have no affiliation. Don't even know who the guys are who run it, but I know their product's pretty good.
I've actually never even heard of them.
Yeah, it's good for restaurants, franchises, retail, hospitality, things that are a little more difficult, not as digitally native. You can certainly find stuff there. You can also, if you can find the person but can't find the contact data, then you can go look at sources like Spokio and things of that. It's just more of a consumer information database. I can go look up John Smith in this city at this company and potentially reverse engineer his contact data from Spokio. So here's what I will say, though. No matter how hard or how easy the process is to build a list, you have to make a conscious choice of, do I want to front load the pain or do I want the pain to come on the back end? I can tell you now the pain on the back end is substantially more expensive. What do I mean by that? So I could make it really easy to go rip down a list. It's human labor hours. That's right. And so do I want to send am I allowed to cuss on this? I'll try not to. You can send a terrible list to your sales floor and you're going to spend all your money on wasted human capital and labor. Or you can have a more consolidated or very focused effort on the front end where you build the right list that goes to the sales floor. And so it's less expensive because there's less waste in the system. I mean, nothing is worse than making $100 as a rep talking to 4 people and 3 of them are irrelevant. I would have never want to talk to them. You just wasted. Here's an easy exercise. How much do I pay my sales reps? How many dials do they do? So let's just say I pay a rep $7,000 a month. They make 1,000 dials a month. They make 2,000 dials a month. Divide the two, and you'll figure out what your cost per dial is. If 40% of your dials are waste because you didn't spend the hard effort on the front end because you cheaped out or you wanted the fast way, then you spent so much more money in labor cost in the back end, and you don't even realize it.
Mm. I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's actually my biggest lesson when I was building SourceCo since we started 3 years ago is we suffered a lot of back-end pain early on because we didn't have the front-end systems, and it took a long time to build that. And for us, we have a lot of clients where the buy box is incredibly niche, right? So it's you have to build the tools to be able to try and filter buy boxes at scale, but also have the team that can manually review, because at some point, right, we put a lot of effort into getting these companies to the table, because some of them there might only be 50 or 70 that are an actual fit. So it's we can spend a lot of money and resources getting them to the table, whether it's sending gifts, cold calling, whatever that is, because we're so aligned that they are a fit based on the account data. And that also really determines, I think, you have to be really sure of your account data, because you're going to have to spend money on contact data. And you want to be able to make sure that you're spending the time, money, resources on contact data that is actually a fit for the accounts that are actually a fit,
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, you cannot cheap out on the data part, unfortunately. I wish you could.
And it's so hard.
It's hard.
We're constantly testing and evolving new services, and we look at it as we have managed to automate a large amount of the process, but we still have a significant manual component, because when we have a list of 70 targets, it's really important we find the right contact for every single one. Whereas I think in some SaaS organizations, you have a huge TAM. It's not about finding everyone in that TAM. It's about maximizing your response from that TAM. Whereas we kind of have a different problem in this world, oftentimes.
Right. Yeah, you're 100% right. It's a tough world. I mean,
Yeah.
We have a number of companies that do sourcing, their brokers and so on, that are customers of TitanX, and data until they unlock that it's a massive headwind for pretty much everybody.
Yeah. So on that note, there are some, you talked about, what was the next problem in your fast cop besides
Yeah.
after data? What was the next one?
Message.
List message. Yeah. So that's a great one, actually, because, we spend a lot of time making sure that when we have a client, like the narrative is consistent throughout everyone, because we'll have multiple touch points, multiple reps potentially working on things. And so, can you talk about, one, how you think about that, 30 seconds when you get on a call and you have to captivate them, what works nowadays? And then how do you write that? How much do you, rely on scripts versus not? Because I think sometimes you can hamstring people by over scripting. Can you just, walk us through how you think about message?
Scripts should be adhered to at all times. Reason being is because the script is meant to create a particular outcome, and the outcome is not to finish the call. And so I think that a script should be used like a key. It's how I get in the door. And it's a very specific fit into that lock that works the best. Once I'm in the house, then I have a lot more leeway to figure out what I'm doing or what I need to do. And so I think scripts are better for the front half of a call and less important for the back half. And so when I'm thinking about a script, my biggest thing is you have to think about when I'm calling someone cold, they don't know I'm calling, I'm a total stranger to them, I'm interrupting them more than likely. I have to realize that there are multiple gates within a call that I have to unlock. And that's all a script's meant to do, is how do I unlock this gate to get to the next one? And then you just essentially keep ascending up that call until you get to the conversation part of that call. And so I think the first thing is you have to, one, let them know that we know that this is interruptive. Two, you want to take as much guesswork out of it as possible for the prospect. If they're sitting there on the defense trying to figure out what your angle is and they're trying to understand, is this a cold call? Do I know this person? Do I not? You're going to create a lot more friction than you are going to create a smooth process to have a conversation. And so, I can give you like a general script that I think works really well. And I've only made like a billion phone calls, with my team. So when I call someone, the beginning of the script, it comes down to two things. It's what you say and it's how you say it. How you say it's very, very important. It's far more important than what you say, honestly. You can sound robotic or not clear or timid or way too excited, and it can kill a call no matter what you say. Like, you can give me the same script that you give this guy over here, and I'm probably going to have a substantially better outcome than you simply because of how I deliver that call. So when I call, someone answers, "Hey, this is John." So I'll say, and I always assume the name. They will tell me if it's not the right name, right? So I'm going to assume the name every time. I hate when people are like, "Hey, is this John?" It's like, you should know, right? You've already gone ahead and bucketed yourself into someone who's not prepared. So I jump in and I'll say, "Hey, John, Joey Gilkey over at TitanX. Actually, first time I've reached you, was hoping you could help me out here for a brief moment." Now, why do I do that? A couple things. One, I assume the name. "Hey, John, this is Joey Gilkey from TitanX." Why am I'm like injecting uhs and pauses, right? There's a reason I do that. As opposed to saying, "Hey, John, Joey Gilkey over at TitanX." There's a lot there to consume. Whereas I'm coming in more conversational. "Hey, John, Joey Gilkey here over at TitanX. Actually, first time I've reached you. This is a cold call, AKA you don't need to wonder whether or not we've talked before. First time I've reached you, was hoping you could help me out here for a brief moment." People want to be helpful most of the time, right? And so if I can just get past that one gate, which is they're going to give me two answers. Who'd you say you're with, Joey? Or, "Yeah, sure, man. What you got?" That's really the only two answers they're ever going to give. And so I've unlocked that gate. And so let's you want to role play it real quick? We can do it.
Yeah.
All right.
So
let's do it.
All right. I'll be the target.
The prospect. Ring.
Hi, this is Tom.
Tom, hey.
Well, I guess I say that's how I answer my call. So I said my name, which kind of said my name.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom, it's Joey Gilkey over at TitanX. Actually, first time I've reached you, was hoping you could help me out here for a brief moment.
Sorry, who was TitanX? I can't recall.
Yeah, appreciate that, Tom. I know I'm reaching out of the blue again. First time I've reached you. Joey at TitanX. Tom, reason I was calling actually, and then I've now unlocked I'm just going straight into the pitch. The other thing is every time I have a moment where I'm talking at someone with statements, right? Reason I'm reaching out is I want to always finish that with a question, right? So we'll go back into who's this again? Yeah, appreciate it. Again, TitanX. First time I've reached you, Joey over at TitanX. Tom, reason I'm reaching out is I talk to business owners like yourself all day, every day. I'm kind of hearing one of two things. Maybe you can tell me if I'm right or wrong here. First is business is good, right? And they're not really looking around at all. The second is maybe they're on their last leg of the business and they're kind of looking for like a succession plan, right? They don't have a kid to give it to, but they're potentially open to selling the company. And it's probably a little bit unique for you, but does either of those sound like your world at all?
Yeah, I'm always thinking about it.
Perfect. Which one of those resonated the most? The second one?
Well, my kids aren't in the business, so it's all about really, for me, figuring out what I want to do when I want to get out.
I hear you. Well, hopefully they're on to bigger, better things, but I know you eventually want to park this thing somewhere. I mean, let me ask you a question. Are you looking to sell this off at some point just to ride off into the sunset? Is it more you're looking to potentially find a partner that can help you kind of grow this and help you take some steps out of the business where maybe you're in the weeds?
I think that I've ran my rope, right?
Well, congrats.
Florida's calling my name when I sell this.
Well, good. Well, Tom, the reason I'm reaching out is I work with XYZ company. We're looking at HVAC companies all day, every day. And honestly, Tom, I really don't know if it's a good fit. If you have some time right now, I can ask you a few questions or we can set something up, but would love to understand. What we do is we buy HVAC companies from great operators like yourself. And we try to find them that retirement money, right? How do we take a company that's your baby and you've really built and put it into the hands of someone who wants to continue building that and keep building the legacy of the company while also giving you liquidity and capital for you to go off and, sail off into the sunset. Does that sound at all interesting to you, or is this more years and years away?
I'm always willing to listen.
Cool.
Florida's nice.
Florida is nice. Yeah, I'm down there quite a bit. I mean, I guess you've built this awesome thing. You have kids that are going to do something else. Have you really put pen to paper on one, like what is your number, and then two, maybe what timeline, if that number were to be presented to you, you'd actually be interested in maybe taking on some liquidity?
I've never had a serious conversation about it. No one's ever really put an offer in front of me, and I know some people that have sold before, but it's not. I've just been running the business.
Well, it's a big emotional moment. Hey, I don't want to take it. I know I called you out of the blue here on a Tuesday. What I would love to do, Tom, is be that first person to put that offer in front of you. I'd love to kind of understand, the bells and whistles of the company, what your desire is for where it lands. But we do this all day, every day. We buy companies just like yours. If you had the time, again, I don't want to be super interrupted, but if you had 30 minutes for us to kind of put some pen to paper, would love to kind of help shepherd you through that process. I've seen this 1,000 times. Yep, cool. All right. So anyways, that's a general call. I thought of all that on the top of my dome, so I would have definitely polished that. But my whole goal was the very beginning that would be very scripted.
That's pretty good, I will say.
I mean, I've sold companies.
Pretty good, very good. And that's actually how we think about it a lot. We think about that a lot in our team, right, with how can we get to the point where we can get them talking, right? And really it's those open-ended questions about their goals and their motivations and what they want really early on. Look, how about this?
Something super unique. How about
I try one? I haven't done.
You sell something very unique.
Well, we're not
you are
selling.
Trying to pay them.
Yeah, we're presenting them with an offer. Exactly. We're trying to give them a check. Look. How about this? Let's. I haven't done a cold call in quite a while.
Great.
But how about I give you my best shot and you can kind of give me some feedback.
Let's do it. All right. Ring, ring.
And it's funny,
Joey.
So, yeah, ring. Hey, Joey. This is Tom from SourceCo. Do you have a second?
Not a ton. I'm running into a meeting, but what you got, Tom?
Just wanted to run quickly. I know that you've built a pretty great company over there. Here at SourceCo, we help connect buyers and sellers, always at no cost to the seller. So I was just wondering if you've ever thought about what you're going to do with your company, if you ever plan on selling it.
I mean, I'm always open. This was a lot more fun back in the day, but it's becoming less and less fun. I'm getting older. My wife's definitely asking me to hang it up, but I seem to be a glutton for punishment. I haven't thought a ton about it. I'm gonna get calls from private equity groups all the time, or some people in town that are looking to buy companies and just kind of smash it into theirs. But I haven't really thought super seriously about it. But I'm always open to the conversation.
Yeah, so I guess if you were to think about it, what matters to you the most? Is it kind of your ongoing role, the profile of the buyer, your employees? Like, what would you really be looking for out of a
Well, we've been around for 22 years. Have some people who've been with me for the past, I think 16 years is probably the longest standing employee. So I definitely want to make sure they're taken care of in the process. So I don't want to just sell to anybody and everybody. But I think for me, it's obviously want to take some chips off the table, and potentially start fading a little bit back into the background for my wife's sake. But it's also making sure that it lands at a place that I feel super comfortable about, which, I might be a little picky on that side of things.
Yeah. Well, look, that makes, complete sense. I always think it's, the obligation of the buyer to make sure that, they can demonstrate that they can be a great steward of your employee and that they can, achieve what you're looking for in a transaction. So, our role is really to make sure that, our client does fit those things. And it sounds like based on this conversation, it does. So I don't want to keep you long, but if you're willing, I'd love to just schedule 15, 20 minutes where I could tell you a little bit more about why our clients are so interested in your company and how they could really structure things around what you want from a transaction and what you want from, your ongoing role.
Okay. I mean, what kind of, you said you have a client, who would the buyer be here? What kind of industry is that in?
So our client is blank and blank platform backed by XYZ investor, and they really specialize in working with companies like yours. That really means that they've developed a program and a process to be a great steward for your brand. They don't want to change it. They want to let the company keep running as it was, but really empower it where you could use that support, whether it's finance, marketing, whether it's getting more benefits access to your employees. They really want to invest in the growth of your company and see how they can be supportive of you and your team.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. Like I said, I've not spent a ton of time on this. I just know that's in the back of my mind every now and then. Yeah, Tom, I mean, why don't we spend a little bit of time together, blah, blah, blah. We can schedule something. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Good, cool stuff. How'd I do?
Yeah, you're good, man. Get back in the saddle. I think what I would have probably changed is I think you got a little into the using language like buyer and seller, and it's no cost to seller. Is like They might not be used to those conversations, so they're like in their head thinking buyer, seller, I'm seller. Okay, I'm seller. What did he say? And so I'd probably try to make, there's what we call the curse of knowledge, right? It's like, hey, we're a level 9 or a 10 on the knowledge scale. They're like a 2 or 3. How do we dumb it down to where it's, fundamentally something they understand more? Because we do it all the time, and especially in like the tech SaaS world, we use a bunch of lingo and acronyms and bullshit that, or excuse my language, use things that ultimately people maybe have to think too much about. And if they're thinking, they're not talking as much, or they're not conversing. So that's the only thing I'd probably give. But other than that, it's great.
I think what I wanted to touch on actually is something that's really important here, and that's how you give feedback on cold calls, because that's one of the best ways to train and develop reps. And that is one area that technology has helped massively. We have AI now that analyzes these calls, gives feedback, tracks how well our team sticks to the script, tracks objections and objection handling. Really use that as coaching moments, much as like, the one-on-one. When you first get into cold calling, that one-on-one development with someone that's more senior is oftentimes, your best source of knowledge. And, trying to be able to replicate all those reps at scale is now really possible. When you think about, these firms or these PE firms that maybe only have 2 or 3 people doing this and they're trying to develop more, what are the training mechanisms that you see a lot of success in? What is the data that matters in this, and how are you training this kind of on-call behavior?
Yeah, I'll get to the high level, which I think is the most important, which is the knowledge transfer to the reps is incredibly important. And so if they don't know, in your world, if they don't know your buy box exceptionally well, and they don't know why your buy box is defined that way, and they don't know the DNA of the companies that you want to buy, it's gonna be really hard for them to talk the talk when they get in those conversations. You're telling me there's 30 million on the other end of this conversation, potentially there's 100 million and there's 200 million on the end of this conversation. I need to know that you know my business for me to have that conversation. It's a pretty intimate, emotional conversation. The second is knowing the buyers very well, right? Not personally, like can't know Tom all of a sudden because I've never met Tom, but there's a general DNA of archetypes, if you will, of the people you're going to talk to. And it's incredibly important to put yourself in the shoes of that person, right? What does their day look like? What pain keeps showing up for them? Have they developed a love for their employees, like in your world, right? Have they been at this for 10 years, 6 years, 25 years, right? Like all those things, if I don't know what that day in the life looks like, it's gonna be hard to have a true conversation with someone. And so that's the first thing I'd say, like really having that knowledge transfer from people who know the market and know the product and know the buyers or the prospects. If you can't transfer that knowledge over, it's going to be an uphill battle no matter what you do. The second is more practical, which is I would start before we get like AI analyzing and all that kind of stuff. We do what we call disposition discipline. So I'll define both of those words there. So dispositions, if you're not aware of that, disposition is very simple. Is when I get into a conversation, what is the label that I give to the outcome of that call? Right. So in my world, it's meeting set, activation. Activation is defined as I didn't get them on the calendar, but I got something, a thread to pull on. There's interest there, there's intrigue there, there's intent there. We call it the 3 I's. The third is a not now. So it's not a bad fit, it's just not a good time. The other is not me. So you might talk to someone who isn't the actual person that makes it. Maybe they have a co-founder that has majority equity and they're the real decision maker or something like that. There's referred, which is also not me, but I'm going to tell you who it is. And then there's not interested, right? There's like the main 6 buckets. You got a couple others like not in swim lane, right? This isn't someone I'd actually want to go buy. Or no longer at company, right? This person's no longer there. They've already retired. They've already sold, whatever. But the reason that's important is because if you think about the aggregate of all conversations that your reps have, the dispositions are slices of pie in that larger pie or that larger pie of conversations, the aggregate. There is a certain way that my pie should look that will tell me if this is going well or this is not. This campaign is going well or it's not. Right? For example, if I get a lot of not interesteds, right? But I have a very small amount of not me's, referreds, and so on. It likely comes down to either what I'm saying or how I'm saying it. Right? Because I'm talking to the right people, right? I don't have a whole lot of the slice of pie that says not me and referred, aka it's not the right person. And so because my not interested slice is really large, that just simply means that there's something wrong with my script or what my rep is saying. And so then I'm gonna dive into that. Okay, there's a large slice of not interested. If I make that slice smaller, that means the other positive slices are going to get bigger. Meetings, activations, follow-ups, and so on. And so the first thing we talk about with the rep is, 1, these are our very strict criteria of what a disposition is. That's defining disposition. The second part of what I said was disposition discipline. We have to teach our reps to disposition correctly. If they disposition their calls and the outcomes of calls incorrectly, I'm now basing my assumptions or my analysis as a sales leader or the person leading these reps, the coach, off of inaccurate data. Right? If they're marking people as interested that should have been not interested, or they're marking people as not interested that are more just follow-ups because it's just a bad timing thing, then I'm working with bad data. So it's always about teaching my reps, this is what this disposition looks like, and then holding them accountable to disposition discipline of always getting that right. That's the first thing. That's an analysis perspective. Then once I actually have that dialed in, I have data to work off of, and I can see how a campaign's performing, then I have a better idea of where I jump in. And that's where it comes down to like transcripts and scorecards and listening back to calls. The hard thing about AI is it doesn't pick up tone very well.
No.
And so as a manager, right, I want to look at certain slices of the pie. The not interesteds is a really good one to start. And I want to go physically listen to every one of those calls, or at least a lot of those calls. Because it's more than likely not a script issue. It's probably the rep delivering it, right? Or they didn't know how to answer certain questions at the end, et cetera. But we've lost the art of like getting in the weeds of the qualitative aspect of coaching, We're really good at quantitative. Did they make enough dials? Did you have enough connects? Did you have enough conversations? Did you book enough meetings? But we get really bad at like doing the hard work of watching the game tape, right? In sports, if all I did was look at the scoreboard and maybe the stats, I'm probably not going to get much better. If I watch the plays, I can start seeing, oh, they stepped wrong here. Oh, you should have went through the 2 gap instead of the 4 gap or whatever. And so that's what I would suggest people who are leading sales reps is you've got to go back to the old school. We're listening to the reps. It used to just be sales floors. I'm sitting behind the rep listening to them. Now we have the privilege of recordings. We can listen to recordings. On top of that, if you do that well, then you have the backup, which is scorecards, right? We score every single call, right? And if it falls below a certain threshold, we know it's a red flag. It gets put into a stream, and we listen to that stream. If it scores really excellently, and we go and listen to it, and it's a really good call, then that goes into a training module, which will go to future reps or other people trying to sharpen the skill. So that's how I would do it.
I think it's really important because when I look at AI, I think one of the most impactful things it can do is directionally tell you where you should be looking on these calls. We do the same thing, right? Where it's like, hey, let's get the 3 best calls and the 3 worst calls. Look at the 3 best calls and the 3 worst calls, and you know, what can we use as training moments? What can we use? Because the only thing you can really do is listen to them, right? I think AI is good analyzing a lot of calls at scale, not individual calls on a one-off basis.
Yep.
And so I think you have to like think about that when you're thinking about what you're using AI to track versus what you're doing manually and how you're translating that to coaching moments.
And you have to, the hard thing about AI is only as good as the bedrock of data you give it.
Yes.
Right. And so, and some of that is, here's what good looks like. Yep. Model off of that. If you don't have that data, then it's like, okay, well then I need to get in there and listen to how they are saying this went, how I, subjectively say this went, and then training it and saying, you got this wrong and here's why. And then you tweak your scorecards, or you tweak the transcript, or whatever you might tweak. But yeah, I think that's the challenge. Is we use it too much as a crutch just to compensate for laziness. It's meant to be something that enables and empowers you to be better, not compensates for laziness. And I think that's unfortunate where a lot of the market went.
Yeah, that couldn't agree more. So I think when we talked about this as part of this, but there's a lot of this tech stack now that is necessary. So maybe you could just talk about some of the core tools that exist in a tech stack, like the subset of those, like dialers, call analytics tools, and talk about where you see value and where you see hype.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think that it depends on your sale, right? If you're going for really small transactions, small ACVs, not that valuable, but you're doing more of a velocity play, it would change versus I'm going after more whales, multiple 6-figure, 7-figure, 8-figure fees, whatever it might be. And that would change. And that changes in software sales or whatever as well. If I sell a $2,000 trinket versus I sell a $200,000 software platform like we do, it's a different model. And the tools I would suggest are different. But at its core, you need a place to get data, right? That might be a combination of just technology or multiple technologies. It might be a combination of people, process, and technology. In your space, it's probably going to be more the latter because it's harder to get data. The technology can't source everything you need to source. The second is you need a central source of truth for reporting, for data warehousing, for analyzing the call dispositions like we talked about, the outcomes, and tracking them along a funnel. Something I see a lot of times is people overemphasize, did we set meetings? And they very often go a couple steps deeper and say, well, are those meetings turning into sales qualified opportunities or not from this specific channel? And they usually just use like a blended, if I look at all my leads, inbound, outbound, referrals, affiliates, paid, organic, they tend to just blend it and say, okay, well, if I get 20 meetings, I get this many sales accepted opportunities and I get this many deals won. Well, it might be extremely weighted towards one of those channels versus others. One might be producing the lion's share of that result. And so that's why it's important to have a place where you analyze. I'm analyzing industries and segments and people I talk to. I'm also analyzing the specific reps that are actually doing the work. I'm also analyzing the channels that those deals originated from. Where's the attribution of where that came from? The next is you're going to have to dial somewhere, right? And so, this is somewhat of a contrarian belief, but I think that today it is almost better, to call on a direct line, desk phone, cell phone, than it is to go and buy into something like a Nooks or an Orem parallel dialer. Right, so I'll kind of educate a little bit people who don't know, right? There's what's called dialing for dollars on your cell phone or a desk phone. There's what's called click to dial, which if you're familiar with like a HubSpot sequences, Outreach.io, SalesLoft, they're like a sales engagement platform. That's a click to dial platform. Then there's a power dialing model, which is I've got a queue of people. I'm not calling multiple people at once, but I'm just powering through. I'm having a conversation. It moves to the next one. It moves to the next one. It moves to the next one. Those are platforms like PhoneBurner, which I think you and I talked about. Platforms like FrontSpin, even Trellis. And then you get into the realm of what's called parallel dialing, which is, well, because we're not getting enough at bats, we should call 3 or 5 people at a time and see who picks up. Fundamentally, that model's broken. And so those are the platforms like Nooks, Orem, Connect and Sell.
We were an Orem customer for 2 weeks.
Yeah, didn't
Might have been
go
3.
well, I'm sure. And it would have gotten worse. It actually usually performs fairly well in the trial, and then it goes terribly 3 months in. And here's why. When you parallel dial and you call 3, 4, 5 people at a time, there's a couple of headwinds you'll experience. One, that is a data-eating machine. You guys got to keep feeding the beast. When you feed the beast, you tend to do worse work on building your list because you don't have an operationalized process of building lists at that scale to feed that machine. So you start getting what we call title drag or title drift, which is you feed it at first your best quality contacts, but eventually you just have to feed the machine. You start throwing crap in there, and it starts to drift on who you should actually be talking to just because you want to feed the machine. The second thing is when you call 5 people at a time and you use parallel dialing's infrastructure, there is what's called the bridge or the patch through, right? You've probably experienced this if you ever picked up a cold call and you say hello and there's a 2-second, 3-second pause. That is not the nature of you doing something wrong or the sales rep doing something wrong. It's the nature of the infrastructure it's built on. They called 5 people at a time. There's a process to knowing that 1 answered and they have to hang up on 4 to patch you through. That takes time. I don't know about you, but anytime I hear that 2 or 3 second pause, I will never convert. Ever. I hang up. And then the last one is you're selling something extremely important, which is I'm going to help you sell your business and make a lot of money. It's an emotional decision. It's a really impactful decision for you. It might even be a legacy decision for you to make. Do I want to blow an opportunity of not knowing who I'm about to talk to because I just dialed 5 people, John, Jim, Sally, Sue, and Aaron? I don't know which one of the 5 is going to pick up. 1 finally did. Now I'm like scrambling to say, oh, Aaron picked up. Now I'm talking to Aaron. Do I really want to start my relationship off with not knowing who I was about to talk to? No. It hurts the conversation, hurts the conversion rates, and all those kind of things. So that's why I caution people around like parallel dialing, Nooks, Orem, and so on. So to your question, very long-winded way of saying, you really need to find a way to either go more archaic, which is your desk phones and your cell phones, or choosing a power dialing model that has what's called spam remediation, right? So FrontSpin has this, PhoneBurner has this, a couple of these tools have it now, where the biggest problem you're going to experience, just like with Google and Outlook on email, is your numbers getting marked as spam. If your dialer doesn't have a process to identify when one of your phone numbers is marked as spam that you're calling from, you will just call people who would have picked up, but they do not pick up spam likely when it says it. And so I'm obviously a proponent of FrontSpin. We have an announcement coming out soon on what that looks like. I'm also a fan of PhoneBurner. Depends on what tools you use. And which ones integrate with what. But if I was in your position, you're trying to build a real sales org that has intelligence and recording and all that, you'd probably want to land at some sort of power dialing function.
Yep.
PhoneBurner, FrontSpin, so on.
I think what you should really evaluate in my experiences, and we've spent a fair amount of time with different dialers, it's really what you want from it long term and what it's going to integrate with. I think when we think about how you're going to get that dial, like a lot of that data that you want to get in your reports, that you want to get in your kind of account data, it has to get out of the dialer. And it's going to get out either manually, it's going to get out through exporting files, APIs, or webhooks. And not all data is going to be available in every one of those forms. So you really have to kind of understand, one, what your appetite for technology integration is, because a lot of these dialers are designed so you can use them with very little infrastructure, but to get everything out of them, you need a fair amount of technical infrastructure and a fair amount of technical savvy.
Yeah, it's one reason why I'm so keen on FrontSpin, despite my vested interest in it, is because it has a direct bidirectional instant sync with Salesforce. So like my tech stack, just kind of give you a lay of the land for what we use. And again, we're pretty stripped down. Like I'm a big believer that if you do the fundamentals right, everything else should be additive to the fundamentals. It should be empowering the fundamentals, not necessarily adding to them. And so we use a top of funnel sourcing mechanism where we go after accounts and then contacts. Honestly, LinkedIn's the best one for my market. So we use LinkedIn Sales Navigator to build the original list. We then send that through a phone waterfall. So we built a waterfall on Titan-X that enables us to source 6 different databases at once to find every phone number for someone. We use Titan-X, which is our product, to identify, okay, of these 1,000 prospects, who are the 220 that answer the phone before we ever hit dial. And then from there, we push that into Salesforce. Salesforce has reporting based off of that tagging system that Titan-X creates, and then we send that into FrontSpin. And then everything that happens in FrontSpin gets sent back to Salesforce, and I do all my reporting on how good was my list, how good is my messaging, all the call recordings, what the outcomes and dispositions were in FrontSpin. It's all in one hub, and I can just query that and do reporting on that tells me this is what's going right, this is what's going wrong, this is who we should be talking to, here's who we shouldn't be talking to.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too different from us. Like I said, we use a lot more on the account side because we have a lot of our own software we've built, and like, the nicheness of some of our accounts is so such that you have to put in a lot in there. But similar to you, use a contact waterfall, phone burner, Salesforce, and then we also have an external data warehouse we built. We have we're so much account based that we need all this information and to query and process and organize that information in ways that's difficult in Salesforce. Yep. So, we have that, which is really your data hub is Salesforce. Ours is kind of this data warehouse where Salesforce is really that UI, UX, and how you interact with it along with other tools.
Yep, like Snowflake's a big one. There's a bunch of different warehousing tools that are good for that. And there's a lot more to what we do than just that, but that's the basics. If that's all you did, you'd be pretty elite. Yeah,
and if you do those steps well. So I think one of the things that I wanted to kind of expand on was just the, we talked about this now, the data, right? You mentioned that. And that's really, when you look at building a dialing program or cold calling, whether it's, cold calling, following up to existing leads, oftentimes the most difficult part of really doing it well is getting the data infrastructure correct and being able to view and interact with that data in a way that is helpful. So can you talk about what data actually matters to track, how you can build that tracking infrastructure?
Yeah, I mean, and there's layers to it, so maybe I give a little more advanced answer and I can probably dumb it down. But like for us, we have very clear, strict customer bands that are ICPs, right? And so not all customers are the right lock and key fit. Some are better for different products, but we have an account scoring model. So we use a tool called Bluebirds. Wouldn't suggest it for most people in here. It's an account scoring tool, but it helps us put in like very specific firmographic details that we really deem as valuable in a conversation. It uses AI to source the web and score those accounts and give them an A, B, C, D, or F, and a Y. And so I think it's important to, no matter how you do it, whether it's manual or it's automated or it's AI, is having a way to really prioritize accounts first. The second is I like to get a holistic picture on that account. So I think a lot of people will just go and grab a contact from the account. They'll start working it, goes well, it doesn't go well, then they go grab the next one. I want to grab all the contacts that I possibly can ever or would want to talk to. Reason being is that creates a holistic picture on where I might be able to enter that account and what would be the most valuable conversations at different levels of that account. Now, for your world, you're talking to one, maybe 2 co-founders at most.
CFO.
Okay, CFO, yeah, so there you go. So maybe you have a couple.
Yeah, a couple. No more than 3 or 4 generally, except like maybe law firms or accounting firms where they have a number of partners.
Yeah, and so you might have different ICPs for different fits and different size companies, but I want to get a holistic picture there. And then at that point, you got to think about, like, for me, it's about what channels am I ever going to hit someone on? You mentioned earlier like gifting and things of that nature. Well, if that's important, then I need to have a really good, solid process for developing address data. And is this a place where they actually spend time, or are they at home and then this is an HQ office or it's whatever? But, it really comes down to what channels do you find effective. So for me, it's pretty simple. It's email, social, and phone. And so we overemphasize the phone. And so for us, we take our phone data very, very important. So we're gathering a lot of phone data. We want to make sure we validate the email so we don't get bounces on our emails when we do send them. And then LinkedIn profiles are pretty universal. So those are easy to source for the most part if they're on LinkedIn. So that's like high level, top of funnel prep work before you actually do the work. What else am I measuring? I mean, age of company, things of that nature are going to be important to you.
Could you focus more less on the account data and more on what's happening on the call, right? Like, connect rate, conversion rate. What are the things? I think there's a lot of...
Oh, got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so back to that dispositioning, what I'm looking for is you have dispositions that we call completions, right? So everything I mentioned earlier is a completion. Meeting activated, not now, not me, referred, not interested. If that is a disposition, I know that I completed that conversation. Then we have what we call a connect incomplete, which is I connected with a prospect, but I didn't complete the call to put them confidently in one of those 6 buckets. Just because someone hung up on me in the first 10 seconds does not mean they're not interested. It means there's either bad timing, bad day, or they're a total jerk. And so they're going to stay in a connect incomplete. So what I'm measuring when we call is dials. Okay, what's the very, very top of the funnel? I'm measuring connects. So I have a dial, I have a connect rate, right? So if I make 100 dials, predictably, how many people am I going to actually connect with? That's what Titan X impacts the most. Our average is 25% connect rate. Most people's is 4 or 5. And so I want to make sure that our connect rate's always pretty stable. The next layer is my completion rate, right? So I make 100 dials. I talk to, let's just say 20 people to make the numbers round. And I got 14 of them where I disposition that call as meeting activated, not now, not me, referred, not interested. That's a completion. That means that I got 60% completion rate. It means 40% is connect incomplete. I didn't complete that call, right? And there's certain benchmarks I'm looking for. I want it to always be above 60, but ideally above 70% completion rate. That means when I get them on the call, I am far more likely to have a conversation with them and complete that call. The next layer is going to be your activation rate. So that is that subset, that second disposition I talked about. Activation means I didn't put them on the calendar, but I got a interest, intrigue, or intent. I want to see that at about 20%. I want 20% of my completions to be activations. And then you, last but not least, have a meeting rate. And so then I'm monitoring, of the people that I completed a call with, how many of those ended up on the calendar. That's all top of funnel to get to the meeting. Then you have to work on, did they show up for the meeting? What is your meeting show rate, right? So if I book 10 meetings and only 7 show up, then I have a 70% show rate. Okay, well, if I have a 70% show rate, what is my qualified rate, my sales accepted rate? That means of the 7 that showed up to the call, let's say I have a 50% sales accepted rate, then 3.5 of those are qualified opportunities. And then I have a win rate, which is, okay, of the qualified opportunities, how many of those am I winning? Let's say 33%. I know I'm going to close 1 deal for every 3 sales accepteds, which requires me to have 6 people show up to a meeting, which means I have to book 9 or 10 meetings, which means that I have to have, let's just say, 30 completions to get there, which means I have to have this many dials because of the connect rate. And so you can build this entire funnel that shows you the exact math of sales to get to 1 completed deal. And if you measure all those things, you'll start to see leaks in your bucket. My activation rate's low, my completion rate's low, my connect rate's low, my meeting rate's low, my show rate's low, my sales accepted rate's low, and so on. If you analyze that, you start to see the trends where I need to focus my coaching or my managing levers.
Yeah, so I think that's incredibly helpful. And I guess the next question this leads into is, obviously, even with a tool like Salesforce, building something like that is going to require a significant amount of resources. How should people be tracking this? What are tools out there? Is this something you can do in Excel, or do you need software?
Yeah, I mean, you can do it in Excel if you're down to do the manual approach of logging every call in Excel. Or, the good thing is there are some dialers that will let you do some of this math. They're going to basically stop you at meeting rate. They're not going to look at show rates and accepted rates. But spreadsheets like how we did things for decades, and so if you have a way of getting the calls you made and the outcomes you made in there, it's pretty easy to click insert pivot table, look at how many calls I made, how many did this, how many did this, how many did that. And so if you're not technically sophisticated, that's a pretty cheap, easy way to do it. You can automate that too, right? If you have some technical abilities and have a way of integrating or using an API to take your call data from your dialer and have it sent into a spreadsheet, it's pretty easy to model. But as a whole, I mean, you can use a pipe drive as a CRM, which is very simple, it has good reporting. You use HubSpot as a CRM, which is a little more technical, but not too complicated. And then like the Mac Daddy of them all is Salesforce, but it's a heavier lift. The way I look at this is very similar to how I talked about earlier of front loading your cost or your time or your energy in the funnel. Same thing here is I would front load the pain of paying to get that done the right way if you can't do it yourself, and have the reporting you need, because it's far more costly on the back end of not having the right data and keep running on assumptions. You run on assumptions, you will eventually drift off course very, very drastically. And so those who want to cheap out, I just would highly suggest being either very meticulous in how you do the manual process, and then maybe find ways to automate. But if you really want to do it right, you just got to spend the money on the front end to get it built the right way.
Yeah, and I will say, like, I'm not a highly technical person. I'm technically competent, but in the past year, I've been able to even build reports and dashboards using, Cursor and Lovable and Claude Code. That, look, our technical team takes over oftentimes after I've kind of laid it out, but it at least allows me to break down the UI, the UX, what the insights and data and things like that are. So there's really tools out there for non-technical people now to at least start to try and experiment with some of these things.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, AI is making things a lot easier. If you don't understand something, literally just pull open ChatGPT, Claude, any of these tools and ask it, hey, if I want to build this report in this system, walk me through it. And it gets you directionally there, if not all the way.
Yeah. So I think the last thing I really want to dive into is, you've hired a lot of people in this space. What are some things when you talk about, hiring the right fit for someone that's going to succeed in a phone-heavy role? What's worked for you? What hasn't? What do you look for?
I'll tell you my whole hiring process because it's unique. I do not let people submit applications to get a sales job. Period. No applications. Don't care about your resume. Don't care about you submitting a form. When I put a post out there, we have a number or multiple numbers set up where it's like, if you want the job, where the job to do is cold calling and business development, I'm going to need you to cold call and business develop into the opportunity. And so I make it very clear, there is no application here. Your application is you pick up the damn phone. That's it. So that's step number one. If they cannot do that, they will not do the job. Or they think they're too good for it and they definitely can't do the job. And so that's a unique part. The second part is I reject every candidate to their face on the first time I talk to them. So Tom, you call me, we have a good conversation. I say, honestly, Tom, seemed like a great guy, seemed super talented. I don't know that I'm feeling it. Why do I do that? Because I want to see, do you handle objections? Do you handle getting shut down? And can you push back on me? Because that's the job to be done once I hire you. Or do you fold like a lawn chair? You fold like a lawn chair, you're going to fold like a lawn chair when I put you in seat. So that's number two. From there, I don't even go to a skill set type of assessment. I go to a culture fit assessment right away. So I will put you, if you get through that, I will give you very specific instructions. Hey, all right, great. This is a great call. They got through me rejecting them. They said they want a shot. They're going to prove it to me, whatever it might be. I say, great. I want you to email me, joey@whatever.com. And I want you to, in the subject line, say, our next call. And then when you used to do that, my assistant's watching that, and she's going to go ahead and put something in the calendar with Rob or Jerry on my team. If they can't put that subject line in the email, they don't listen to me. So therefore, I kick them out. If they do, then we put them on the calendar. On that call, it's very, very culture-driven, and I want to get to the core of who are you, Tom, as a person? What do you care about? What's the hardest thing you've ever been through? How do you view that season of life where you walk through that? Tell me about your daily routine. Don't care what it is, but what is it? If they can't tell me that they have a routine of some sort, I know they're not a disciplined person. And then I'll ask questions around, like, what do you know about us and stuff like that. But that's interview number one after the cold call and the rejection. From there, if they pass that, I put them into more of a skills assessment. So then I put them into a different interview where it's more about drilling them on, like, the job to be done, some stats they have from their past, what really, if they look at their body of work and their career, what is made up with it? Do they know their stats from their last job? Things like that. If they pass that, then we go to what we call trial by fire. This is the most unique thing we do, which is I will take my top. If I get 300 candidates, I will hire one person. That's how thorough this process is for us. And so usually we get 300, 600 people that apply for a particular role. I'm going to get my top 4, top 6, and I'm going to put them in trial by fire. Trial by fire is this. It is a Zoom call with everyone you're competing against, and we're going to cold call together. And I'm going to ask them, do you want a script or do you want to use your own? If they say they want to use their own, I already know they're out. If they say they want to use ours, or they at least want to look at ours and get some feel, then I know that they're coachable. But then I make them cold call in front of all of their competition, one by one. Right? Tom's going to make 10, 15, 20 dials. I'm going to, after every conversation, give them coaching, see how they do. After Tom goes, Sally goes, and then I'm going to see how Sally does. And I'm going to see how they do under pressure in this high-pressure pressure cooker environment. And then from there, I finish the call with, do you guys have anything else to say? This is the last step before we make the decision. And if they say nothing, they don't pitch themselves, they don't, speak up at all, then they're probably not a good fit. If they only speak up a little bit, but then they send me a 7-paragraph email afterwards of why they're a good fit, then I will always say, well, why didn't you say that live on the call? And so I know it sounds like a very laborious process because it is, but it's also why I don't miss. It's such a thorough process that makes sure I get the right person who's built the right way to do the right job.
Very helpful. Very helpful. And I think, to summarize, you've done such a good job in adding value to, the people that are listening. I'd love for you to dive into what TitanX actually does, because I think it's a very interesting concept that's highly relevant, and it's really exciting.
Okay. Yeah, TitanX, we're a phone intent platform. And so the way I like to frame what that is, because we are the only one in the market that really does this, is if I was sitting with all of you who are listening right now and I asked you all the same question, which is, if I cold called you right now and you didn't recognize the number, let's say it was clean, it wasn't marked as spam, how likely are you to pick up the phone? Most of you are going to say, no. Some of you might say yes or somewhat. And then I would direct the question to those who said no. And I would say, okay, for those of you who said no, if I was to call you 5 times in the next 2 months, am I going to change that answer? Probably not, right? And they would say, correct. And then I say, why is that? It's because it's human behavior. Some people answer, some people don't, right? Some people just have a propensity to answer cold calls. Some people don't. The reason that's important is because TitanX is built around that question. There's a metric that we are built around that no one measures, which is called the reach rate. And a reach rate's very simple, which is when you make cold calls, let's say you have 1,000 prospects. The percentage of those 1,000 people that will ever pick up the phone, whether you call them once or you call them 10 times, is only about 15 to 20%, which means for every 1,000 prospects you send to your sales floor, they will only ever talk to 150 to 200 of them because it's human behavior. It's a small percentage. The problem that presents to you is if 20% answer and 80% don't, your reps don't know who's who, so they treat the 20% and the 80% identically. And so they spend the same amount of time on the 80% as they do the 20%, and they just waste your money and their time dialing people that will never answer. What TitanX does is we know exactly who that 20% is before you hit dial. I know who's going to answer. And when you do that, you go from making 100 dials in a day as a rep and talking to 4 people to making the right 100 dials a day and talking to 25 people. All we are is connect rate optimization.
That's awesome. And look, it's been incredible to watch you guys grow. And, we've been a customer, and it's been a huge asset. So we're excited to continue to see what you guys can do and how you can add value to people that are, out there in the field every day.
Yes, sir. Well, we appreciate you guys being a customer, and more big things to come with the funding announcement today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, look, guys, thank you so much. Everyone, have a great day, and join up for the next episode.